Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to turn your attention, if you will, to the passage that Samuel read just a moment ago in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17. Grateful that all of you are here with us tonight. Those of you that were not able to be with us this morning, you were able, hopefully, to go to the website at some point in time and listen to the message that came from the elders here. I would encourage you to do so. Tonight we're going to hopefully support what it is that they mentioned this morning. And I guess I say they, even though Joel might have been necessarily the one that spoke. I do believe that every one of them, their voices were used in presenting to us the things that we need to know and understand here at Veterans Parkway. The text in the Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17 brings out this one specific line: they keep watch over your souls. And before we get into this in depth, I first of all appreciate very much and are very thankful, and Diane and I express this quite often to ourselves, how much we appreciate the invitation that the elders extended to us to come and be with all the congregation here. And we are very, very blessed and very appreciative of being able to work with you in the last 3 years plus a few months, I should say, that we've been here with you. And we do all that we possibly can in our place to make what they do easier. And I would hope that you would do the same. I guess sometimes the question that is raised relative to the idea of elders is, what is it that they do? What do the elders do? Or what do the shepherds do? I'm going to probably use the word shepherd quite often, more so than I'd use the word elder in this lesson tonight, because of the statements that are made here in the book of Hebrews chapter 13. The elders make decisions, and that's probably the most common answer that is given relative to what the elders do. They resolve conflicts. They make financial decisions. They are people who lead in withdrawing members. And that's just another common answer. I mean, the list could go on all the many things that these elders do. But I want you to think about it from a standpoint of biblically what is stated relative to what it is that they do. And that is, they are protectors, they are teachers, they are examples, they are the ones who lead and they guide the family of God. And specifically, when it comes down to what it is that we're doing here at the Veterans Parkway Church of Christ. And when you think about all the things that they do biblically, there's a lot of things that are taking place biblically that they're doing. And the time that is spent doing those kind of things and putting forth the effort to make sure that they're leading and guiding and protecting and teaching in the right way takes a lot of time. Takes a whole lot of time. Time of which many of you may know, and time of which many of you may not know. And as a result of that, I just want to give you an illustration of the possibility of one of the things that they do. And it has to do with the fact that they do everything they can to be better. If you were given that opportunity to state to them how they could be better shepherds, what would you say to them? Well, maybe what you need to do is to attend some leadership conference and understand better how to do these interpersonal relationships that you have with other people. And if you took that conference or went to that conference, you might learn how to better work with people. Would you think that maybe what they need to do is take some business course relative to being better budgeters of financial matters? I mean, the list could go on. I could elaborate on a lot of different things. But what would you suggest that they do? What would be the suggestion that you give to them? One of the things that Joel mentioned this morning is that they have opportunities that they give you and I to be where we can meet with them. And if you have that opportunity to be able to meet with them, what would the content of the things of which you would address to them be? I don't know what all the content of their meetings are. I would say that very seldom has there ever been many people, brethren, who would come to them, and the only thing that they would say within the first 30 seconds would be, thank you for what it is that you do. The time that you spent leading me, helping me, guiding me, feeding me the things that need to be done. We thank you so much, for example. And that's all I came in here to say. And then you turn around and walk out the room. I don't know that they've had that. They may have. I don't know what that. But I would think that would be a very, very encouraging and exhorting moment to have you do that for them. Besides maybe writing them a letter, texting them a message, or going even to visit them while they may take the opportunity to come to visit you. Let me illustrate another thing. One of the things that is very possible that these elders do is similar to what the vision of what you're seeing before you. When you look at that picture, and I must tell you that that picture comes from what's known to be the Pulpit Rock in the country of Norway. It's a very wonderful place, beautiful scenery, has a very interesting view of the fjords that are common in the country of Norway. When you look at that picture, I wonder what it is that's coming to your mind. Number one probably is, how did that sheep get up there? And number two is, how's that sheep going to get out of there or off of that rock? How's that sheep going to get there? And how's that sheep going to get off that rock? And what caused that sheep to go get on that rock? You must know that the Pulpit Rock stands or sits about 2,000 feet above the water. This is where this particular area is. And with all the crevices that are there underneath where that rock is, leading to that, it's a very dangerous place, without a doubt. And maybe you're wondering, would the sheep have the ability and the wherewithal and the knowledge and understanding of whatever it was that took them out there on that rock to take them off that rock? Or would it be that they have no way to know what to do? They have no way to get off that rock, so therefore you're the one, and in this case, in my illustration, the shepherds would be the one that has to go retrieve the sheep. I would say that there's been moments where shepherds have witnessed the track and the life and the pathway of their sheep, of whom they oversee, and the next thing you know, they find themselves in a very, very dangerous position. And when the sheep are in that very, very dangerous position, who is it that's going to go rescue them? Who is it that's going to go out there on that rock, which is dangerous enough in and of itself for the sheep to be there, and it risks the life of the shepherd to go out there and retrieve that sheep from off that rock? There's no telling how many calls, how many letters, how many messages, how many meetings that elders have had where when the sheep explains to them what's going on in their life, it's like they're sitting up on the rock, and the shepherds are sometimes sitting there shaking their head. How in the world did they get out there? What is it out there on that rock that attracted them so much that they thought they needed to get out there on that? Don't they know, and do they not realize how dangerous it is to get out there on that? And now they're looking for us to be the one to some way fix the problem, some way rectify what's going on, some way to get out there and get them off that dangerous place. I want you to listen to the scriptures as Paul addresses the elders. And listen to this as he is speaking to the elders there at of Ephesus in Miletus. And here's what he says, beginning in verse 27 through verse 32. And picture again this sheep that is out there on the rock. For I shrank not from declaring unto you the whole counsel of God. Take heed unto yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you bishops, to feed the church of the Lord, which he purchased with his own blood. I know that after my departing, grievous wolves shall enter in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away the disciples after them. Wherefore watch ye, remember that by the space of 3 years I ceased not to admonish every one of you night and day with tears. And now I commend you to God and to the word of this grace, which is able to build you up and give you the inheritance among all them that are sanctified. Now this is Paul addressing this to the elders. What would you believe it would be like if that same message of which he's giving to them would be spoken to you, to the brethren that are here? Would you give heed to what they're trying to help you understand? Would you, as a sheep, be willing to listen and take heed to what it is that they're saying, so that it would prevent you from going out there on a dangerous place like this with the possibility of falling? For they have a very challenging, serious, God-given responsibility to make sure you don't even go out there to start with. But once you're there, what are they going to do now? This picture right here just helps you understand very clearly that some sheep just find themselves in a very dangerous position that they should never go in if they would have taken heed to what the responsibilities of the elders would be, which is, according to Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17, is to do what they do in this responsibility with joy, that you find in the text in the book of Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 17. They do this with joy. It is not one of these things that they just take lightly. It is not one of these things that they just say, well, if no one does this, I might as well be the one that finds myself in a position to be one of the next elders, so I can make some decisions that are very, very difficult with the ones that are already there. This is not a cumbersome job. This is not a cumbersome responsibility. It is not a confining charge. It is to be one that's taken, committed, and continually done in trust of the chief shepherd that's given them this responsibility of his church. And they are the ones that's going to be giving the warnings of all the dangers that are out there. Watch for what's going on. You need to be the one that is to be protected, in order that you not climb up there on the rock and get yourself in a situation where you could very well slip, fall, and be eternally lost. That's why Acts chapter 20 says what it does in verse 28, verse 29. You make sure that you do everything you can to protect them so that they don't get themselves in very unusual, difficult, trying, and dangerous positions. One of the things you might want to think about as it goes along with this, and when there's a statement that is made here in the book of Acts chapter 20 that they're to be examples to the flock, that example is a very joyous opportunity that they do not mind that their life is presented to you in a lot of different ways. Not just as a husband or as a father, but as a leader of the family of God. They're individuals that all through their life, they're trying to set forth an example of which they would love for you to mimic and follow. In other words, it's like Titus chapter 1 verse 6 talks about, when it talks about one of the qualifications, be blameless. That's what their life is to be. That's what they want to do. They want to give to you an example that you could duplicate. So let's go back to the illustration of the rock and the sheep out there for a minute. And there's not a sheep out there. Do you believe that an example of a shepherd is for them to go out there on the rock and say, look, I made it, everything's okay, I'm fine. Why don't all the rest of you come out here? If I can do this and it not bother me and it not affect me, so why don't all the rest of you come out there? Now, don't come all at once, But one at a time, y'all can come out here, and you can see that it's not that bad. Do you think that any of our elders, first of all, will ever jump on that rock out there? I doubt very seriously that they would. But then would they ever find themselves at a very dangerous position? Then they say, I made it, I'm fine, everything's okay. And then they call you and say, well, come on, follow me. Everything's going to be okay. You're not going to get hurt. Now, part of the example that you're looking at from the standpoint of what the scriptures say about blameless is they're not going to find themselves with an attitude and behavior and a conduct, and they're not setting forth an example that says, okay, it doesn't matter how dangerous it is, just get yourself out there, it'll be okay. You'll survive. No, they're submitting to God, and they're giving the same warning as Paul is giving to the elders here, and says we need some illustration of what a shepherd's like, and we need that spiritual leadership in the family of God so that we don't find ourselves in situations like many sheep do. And again, they come to the elders asking them, will you help me out of this problem? The joy of being an elder that the text talks about here in the book of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 6. I believe sometimes is dismissed while we're talking about obedience, submission, and watching, and giving account. All those are true, but then when we miss the one that they may do this with joy, we might ought to investigate whether or not at this moment what we are doing as sheep is leading them to do what they do as shepherds with groaning. English Standard Version uses the word groaning. American Standard uses the word grief. And we'll talk about that at the end of the lesson. But while they are doing this, there are two very specific things that you and I do that the text brings out, one of which is obey them. I've never heard any of the elders here say, obey me, obey us. The text in Scripture gives you that emphasis. And as Joel was mentioning this morning, shepherds are accountable to the sheep, and now we're looking at sheep being accountable to the shepherds. And it's not because they're delivering this message, obey us, obey us, obey us, but what they are doing is very, very special, and they're doing it regularly, and they're not being mandatory with it. And according to the book of 1 Peter chapter 5, they're not doing it with force, and nor are they lording it over us. But there is something about them called maturity and wisdom and experience and knowledge and godliness as well as holiness that is presenting to you and to me a very, very valuable moment to be obedient to them. I mean, they're not necessarily individuals who are well-versed in a lot of educational things. And I don't know how well-skilled all of them are with computers. And I don't know what all their political standing is. And I don't know all these other particular things of which you may think they need to have a little bit more skill about than maybe they do right now. But when you look at what it is that they're doing, they're individuals who know dangerous territory. Now, they may have been there before, and they may have done that. And they may have even witnessed other people, but they don't want you climbing on the rocks and living in a dangerous position and say, you'll be okay. Sometimes we may even think that some of us are maybe one generation removed from them. And as a result of being one generation removed from them, and they're just one generation older than us, then they may not understand what it's like in the generation in which we're living and what it is that we're experiencing. And as a result, maybe it's because they are in that position of being one generation above us, they don't understand what it is that we're facing. Therefore, why should it be that we will listen to them? We may think we can do it better, but we won't do it any better. They may say, you may say, we'll be okay, but you're not going to be okay. No matter what the separation of the generation may be. We may say, it's going to be okay, but they're going to say, no, you're not going to be okay. Just listen to what I'm telling you. And they exhort their brethren to come and worship in fellowship, as was mentioned this morning. And we sometimes want to argue with it. And we want to sometimes object to it. And we would be the ones who will say, well, I don't think it's good for me to be able to do this because of. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it because of. And the urging and the exhortation and the encouragement that they give for you to forgive is something of which you won't do, because the people of which you have been hurt by really don't understand how difficult it is to forgive. When they give you these instructions urging you to read God's Word and you say, I don't have time for that. And when you're the individual who says, I don't think this is essential, I don't think this is really important, then it's those people that are the shepherds with all those oppositions and all those arguments and all those things in which they deny doing and don't want to do. They're the individuals that are calling upon the elders up on the rock, and they're about to lose their soul. And not only that, they've given birth to some lambs of which they don't have any interest in God, and they're trying to let the elders help them resolve a situation in which they put themselves in. All because they didn't listen to what the elders were telling them. Their marriage is in a mess. They're in a financial state of such that they can't make ends meet. All these things that are going on, everything is a disaster. Everything seems to be a failure. Their faith is even failing, and they don't know if they're going to make it to heaven. And they're just hoping they don't die anytime soon. And while the elders have been the individuals who have given this opportunity to say, there's a dangerous territory out there, don't find yourself upon that rock. They want you to obey. And I hope you're not one of these sheep that's crying out. And I hope you're not one of these sheep that talks about all your troubles. And I hope you're not one of these sheep that is very afraid. And I hope you're not one of these sheep that gets out there climbing on the rock when the elders have done everything they could to tell you, listen to what we're saying. Follow the biblical pattern. Far be it from us that we would ever talk back to an elder in an argument and with slander and with confrontation and say to them, you just don't understand what's happening, and object to their instructions. Probably what we need to do, and this is not an illustration that you would find used most often, but I remember the case with David and his men in the cave of En-Gedi in the wilderness. In the book of 1 Samuel chapter 24, and Saul and his men were coming along, and Saul comes into the cave, the same cave that David is in, and they stay. They sleep. David is encouraged, according to verse 10 of the book of 1 Samuel chapter 24, now you have the opportunity to take this man and do to him what you please, which their implication is take his life. And instead of listening to the exhortation and the encouragement of everybody else, David goes over and cuts the skirt of the garment and doesn't draw the spear to kill him. Because the statement that is made regarding him is that he is an anointed of God. Our shepherds are anointed as a God-given place that do not need to be criticized nor demeaned, but to be honored as a God-ordained place where they lead the sheep of God. And there's probably not a better way. Well, there probably is. I'll say that. I'll take that back. One of the ways of which you can best please God than to be obedient to the shepherds here at Veterans Parkway. Before I go on, I must tell you, and Joel mentioned this morning, he did not know, nor did any of the other elders know what I was going to talk about tonight. So I am not saying this because these words that I put together are words that they chose for me to speak. Biblically, you see the case is stated. And it really doesn't need to be elaborated on very much, other than to say the second part about this, that which we can do in the book of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17, is to submit to them. The submission to them. That doesn't mean they're going to make sure they're going to dominate you and they're going to be oppressive to you. This is going to be one of those situations that they're going to be people in this place of power and control. I believe all four of our elders know what God's assignment is to them. And when you talk about this idea of submission, I know that this word, submission, is a very difficult term to learn, as well as know, as well as practice. It's not a very popular term, not a very popular term at all. But with the word submission is a matter of a place and is a matter of a function. Let me give you an example of this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, 1 Corinthians 11, in verse 3, he says, I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. There's a place and there's a function that goes with this headship as well as submission. There is a submission going on in verse 3. It's not stated per se, but it's implied because of the position of each one, whether it's God, Christ, man, or woman. Same thing's true when it comes down to an elder. An elder is an individual, a shepherd is an individual who understands this idea of submission. And here's the interesting thing about this whole aspect of being submissive to the elders, and that is those of us that are Christians, that are already sheep, we know what submission is. We're already practicing it. We're the individuals that are already members of Christ. We're already submitting to Jesus. Therefore, this matter of submission is a heart thing that we're doing, and we're now finding ourselves in a position where we're submissive to these men that are elders. And here's an interesting thing about the place of elders or the place of shepherds. Their idea and understanding of what you will do as a submissive individual to their leadership, they are individuals who are already submissive to Jesus, as well as to the fact that they're submissive to the responsibility they have to be the guide and to be the example and to be the leader and the one that does the shepherding. In other words, submission is going to be in place before the actual true obedience comes in place. There are a lot of people that can obey anything, but very few will have the heart of submission. I would say that many of you that are parents probably have had, I'll just give you an example. You got an 8-year-old boy or girl that you say, okay, it's time to go to bed. It's time to go to bed. And I would say they may very well get up and go to bed. And they may get up and they may go, but they may go with their head down and just can't believe that they got to go to bed. They'll obey, but they really won't have their heart in submission to what it is that you're wanting them to do, or the reason for why it is that you're wanting them to do it. Other than that you just given them a command that they know they need to obey. And as a result of that, you may not fully have the submission in place that really leads to the obedience. Now, let me give you an example of that when it comes down to being a shepherd and a sheep. Several years ago, I was at the church building, the church where we were, where there were elders and deacons. It just so happened that I was at the church building at the time. There was a certain deacon that was there doing some particular work at the church building at that time. I went in, happened to see what he's doing. I said, well, what is it that you're doing? And he began to explain to me what it was he was doing. He said, what this is just something that the elders wanted done, so I'm just doing what they told me to do. You've got a deacon in that case that's just following through the orders and obeying what the elders wanted him to do without the full attitude of submission that went through with the possibility of truly obeying. And I just hope and pray that you have the submissive heart that will lend itself toward obedience, and let obedience have its full work in your heart into what it is they ask you to do and be. If Jesus came to the world, according to John chapter 5, verse 30, to do the will of him that sent him and to do his work, and only from the standpoint of obedience, just doing what God asked, never fully submitting to what he should do, then dying on the cross would have been useless. He was just following through. He was just obeying. Therefore, the idea of submission is you remove your rights. You just don't dig your heels in and say, well, they can't tell me this is something I need to be doing, and demand your way. I choose to go another way. Submitting is what's going to produce the obedience and lends itself toward fully being what God asked of you to be and pleasing him, as well as doing what you can to build up and unite the church and definitely follow through with what fellowship means. Submitting is the desire to understand instructions and warnings, because shepherds have the welfare of the sheep in mind. And whenever there is an instruction given to me, or instruction given to all of us, then the submission of the heart of that individual is going to change, because they know why the elders are doing it. And if they don't know why the elders are doing it, they should ask the reason why the elders are doing it, and then they become to be submissive to what it is the elders are asking them to do and to be. And the result will be they're not going to climb up on the rock. They're going to stay away from that, because they want their faith to increase. They want their spiritual life to grow. And they want to be united with everybody else. They don't want to find themselves in a predicament where they might fall and lose their soul. They see very seriously what it is that they're trying to do. And with every bit of comfort they give, and love they give, and truth they give, and example and instruction and guidance, they do this because they don't want the sheep falling away like some have done. I don't live in the heart of our elders, and none of us do. But of all the many times that they've instructed and guided and comforted and taught, and even spent restless nights tossing and turning, trying to figure out what are we going to do with this brother, sister, family in this circumstance, never been with them when that's happened, but you know without a doubt they're going through that and those stages in order that they help us be who we should be. And let them do this with joy and not with grief. And if you hear a horror story from them about a brother or sister in Christ or a family that's gone through something similar to this, and tell you what the results are and the consequences are, you better listen to it. And don't go away thinking that this will never happen to me. This circumstance is not us. This is not what I would do. But listen to those stories, because those stories can be very well repeated within your own life. That way you don't become to be the one that is the next family or the next person that has all these challenges and all these disturbances and all these difficulties that are going on in your life, causing a perplexing situation for them to have to handle, deal with. And like a Solomon, I don't know, maybe we should just cut them in two and maybe resolve everything. Don't let them do what they do with grief. And I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody. Let them do what they do with joy, just like the scriptures say. Doing it with joy and not with grief. And one of the things, I'm going to make a very serious challenge to all of you brothers here related to what we can do to bring about a true understanding that they do this with joy. Publicly, consistently, and continually pray for them. You may do this at home, wonderful, great. Do it publicly. Not just so they'll hear it, but for the benefit of everybody else that's in this room. For your prayers publicly for them just helps them understand. And it brings your heart to the point of submission to what it is that they're wanting you to be and do. And it puts their heart into a true mode that they know how accountable they are for what it is they're doing for you and for everybody else. And they want to make sure they do this right. They don't want to ignore what God says. They want to be that example. They want to avoid every possibility of trouble. They want to avoid every possibility of conflict. They would love to know that they have done well to defeat Satan. And you in your life and me in my life can do that by living according to the will of God. That way their work is done with joy and not with grief. Listen to these words as I close. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 12 and 13. We beg you, we beseech you, brethren, to know them that labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them exceeding highly in love for their work's sake. Be at peace among yourselves. The esteem of which you and I are begged to do, and the knowledge of these individuals of which you and I are begged to do, that lends itself toward the conclusion of what verse 13 says. We will be at peace among one another. And that fellowship with one another is so vital for the growth, the unity, the peace, the harmony, the building up of the body of Christ. If you're one of these individuals that as a sheep here at Veterans Parkway who's in this position, and you're out there on a very dangerous place, and you're wondering, how am I going to get off? I just need some help. Your first greatest help will be God and your repentance and your change of heart and being submissive to Him toward obedience of His will. And then allowing the elders, the shepherds, to be the ones who will lead you. Be in their flock that God has given them this responsibility to do. Be in this flock with them. And not find yourself up on the rock in a dangerous position, lest you fall and they attend your funeral and you didn't come back to God. Do what the Lord asks you to do while together we sing this song.